What's going on, everybody? It's your boy, the Puerto Rican Semanticist, and today's my first time actually going live on YouTube. I don't know why I was restricted for a long time because, according to them, I had violated YouTube policies and regulations. I guess at that time, being a conservative, now I'm just centered political commentator. So today I wanted to touch up on Kanye West and his visit with Donald Trump. Now, as everybody knows, most of you probably did the same thing that I did, which was basically you sat through what was going on between Kanye West, the NFL Football Hall of Famer, which, honestly speaking, I can't remember his name because of the simple reason that Kanye West literally took me out of, he just stole all the attention. Now, now I don't know if you guys paid attention to what was going on yesterday, but Kanye West really seemed out of touch with reality. Kanye West started talking about how he believed that a certain gang leader was actually him in another interdimensional universe and all types of craziness. Anyways, getting to the point of this topic, Kanye West ended up asking Donald Trump yesterday for to pardon a man known as Larry Hoover. And for those of you who don't know who Larry Hoover is the founder of a black gang, national gang, which was started in the 1960s, known as Gangster Disciples. Now, this is the person that during his conversation in front of the media and in front of Trump, he was trying to convince people that this is him in another interdimensional universe. Now, just to bypass the silliness and get to some actual facts, here's the part that I find insane, is that just a couple of months ago, Donald Trump was actually trying to get support or gain support for an idea of legislating or creating legislation that would allow us to give the death penalty to drug traffickers. Now, somewhere along the line, Donald Trump's narrative changed. Because if you notice, it wasn't until a couple of weeks after Donald Trump was trying to gain support for that idea, a couple of weeks later, Kim Kardashian paid Donald Trump a visit. Now, as everybody remembers, at the time, Kim Kardashian paid Donald Trump the visit. It was in regards to asking Donald Trump to grant clemency to, once again, a drug queenpin known as Alice Marie Johnson. So if you look at the pattern of what's been going on in the Trump administration, you have to ask yourself some very logical questions. How does a president go from one promise to breaking, or at least completely going against that one promise, and begin to go completely against the same narrative? So I started thinking about what was going on in 2016. As everybody knows, during the presidential election, a lot of right-wingers, conservatives, Republicans were getting beat up by groups that belong to either the resistance, Antifa, or some kind of extreme left-wing resistance groups. Because of this, and because of the stigma that at the time was being placed or at least promoted about the right, right-wingers were being labeled as racist, bigots, xenophobe, Islamophobe, everything in the book. So if you look at what Donald Trump is actually doing, if you notice that he went against his own narrative of following up with death penalty for drug traffickers, which at that time the narrative was beneficial to him because he was trying to also gain support for the building of the war. And at the time, drug traffickers, building the war, rapists were all synonymous to the fear-mongering and the Hispanophobia that was being promoted through this kind of rhetoric. Now, Donald Trump realized something. He realized that when Donald Trump came out, when Kanye West came out in front of the news and claimed that he liked Donald Trump, according to polls that were held by TheRoots.com, Donald Trump gained a 3-4% black favorability vote. Now, even though at the time it appeared to be a good sign for a lot of these supposed overnight African-American red pillars, but the fact of the matter remains that if you looked at other news sources, you would have realized that the census that was held was fundamentally flawed, because of the simple reason that, one, the poll was only held with 112 participants. And out of the 112 participants, only 88 people actually voted. And then the groups get smaller, of course, in accordance to the age of the person. It differentiates, meaning that the younger the person, the more susceptible, receptive they are to Kanye West stating that he supports Donald Trump. And the more adult the African American was, the least likely they were to either align with Kanye West or Donald Trump. So the poll was fundamentally flawed. Also understanding that in 2016's presidential election, less than 7% of the entire African American population voted in favor of Donald Trump. So because of this, Donald Trump has taken the opportunity to tap into the fan base of both Kim Kardashian and Kanye West. Taking into consideration that, like I said, Donald Trump went from trying to gain support for the death penalty for drug traffickers to a couple of weeks after that, granting clemency to a drug queenpin known as Alice Marie Johnson, simply because Kim Kardashian paid him a visit and asked him to do so. Not coincidentally, yesterday during the event held in the White House between Kanye West, NFL Football Hall of Famer, what's his name, and Donald Trump, Kanye West once again goes there to ask for clemency for, once again, a drug dealer, and not only a drug dealer, because, and let me tell you, and there are a lot of drug offenses, which are, by the way, non-violent felonies, that do merit some kind of, special programs or whatever, because they're not really physically harming anybody. They're giving people stuff that they want. So because of that, the law tends to look at non-violent felonies in a different way. But why would Donald Trump cater to these demands weeks after trying to gain support for the death penalty for drug traffickers? And what makes sense to me is that Donald Trump is doing it in order for him to gain an African-American support base. And the reason I think that this is wrong is because of the simple reason that it's part of something called the soft bigotry of low expectation. And what that means is that when you drop the bar of expectation for the African-American community to the point where all it takes for you to gain an audience is for you to begin to grant clemency to drug dealers that basically affected those same African-American communities, if that's the only way that you can gain support from the African-American community, then ultimately there is no bigger sign or example of the soft bigotry of low expectation. Because there's nothing lower than to expect to gain votes from the African-American community simply because you're granting clemency to African-American drug king and queen pins, and as well as gang organizers. Because in the man that Kanye West is asking Donald Trump to grant clemency on, there are movies on this man. Hoover Deuce. Anybody ever seen that movie? Hoover Deuce. It was based on Larry Hoover, the founder of the Gangster Disciples. This organization was founded in the 1960s. And even today, that same organization is still coming out in the news. Because they're in Chicago, they're in California, they're in the West Coast, they're in the South, they're everywhere. So you're telling me that the only way for Donald Trump to get African American support is by releasing African Americans that were doing more damage to the African American community than any politician on the left. Because the gang that was formed by Larry Hoover is still today in existence and is still coming out as of last year, came out raping, sodomizing, grooming little girls, drug trafficking, etc. So who is it that Kanye West is asking Donald Trump to release back into the African American community? And this is what I'm saying. Kanye West got together with an African American overnight conservative known as Candace Owens. For those of you who don't know, Candace Owens was an extreme leftist liberal who campaigned against Donald Trump all the way till February or March of 2017, a few months after Donald Trump had already won the election. Now, when Candace Owens went online to complain about the fact that one of her social sites known as Social Autopsy was shut down because it was found that Candace Owens was doxing and cataloging the thought crimes of minors, of kids online, and social justice warriors filed a complaint against her Kickstarter funding program. Once her site was shut down for doxing and cataloging kids, Candace Owens went online. She started complaining and calling the left racist. And guess who ended up embracing her? Republicans, conservatives. They took her in like this, like a long lost child. The conservative and the Republican white population embraced Candace Owens. You know why? Because now it gave the right the same weapon that the left was utilizing against the right in 2016. But the only difference is that the left is filled with African Americans. It wasn't until 2017 that all of a sudden the right now has an interest in tapping into the African American audience. Why didn't they have an interest before Donald Trump ran for the presidency? So understanding this historical anomaly, then we can ultimately conclude that to a certain degree, right-wingers, Republicans and conservatives didn't really give a shit about the African-American vote in the right. And it was only until Donald Trump came into power that the right decided, well, we don't want to be seen as racist forever. And because Donald Trump was spewing a lot of narratives that promoted Hispanophobia, that promoted xenophobia, that promoted Islamophobia and such, they decided that they were going to start utilizing African Americans, bring African Americans from the left and to the right, encourage them, label them red pill blacks, in reference, of course, to that movie, The Matrix, where you pop the red pill and you wake up out of the Matrix. So they start calling African Americans red pill blacks, bring them from the left and to the right, and then weaponize African Americans against white people on the left. Because now they have Candace Owens talking about how the Democrats are exclusively racist. You have Kanye West saying that that African Americans are stuck in a plantation. Who do you think is mentoring him in regards to his rhetoric? It's Candace Owens. Candace Owens and Kanye West have a good working relationship. You know why? Because both Candace Owens and Kanye West both managed to monetize off of the right. They both managed to monetize off of Republicans and conservatives. Take into account that, like I said, Candace Owens didn't support Donald Trump. She still doesn't support any right-wing Republican or conservative commentator. So how is it that Candace Owens became the new voice of the right? Because of the simple reason that she's pointing fingers at the left and saying that the left is exclusively racist. This rhetoric is what got Candace Owens from a nobody, because Candace Owens was nobody in March of 2017. Then it wasn't until August or September, during a MAGA rally, which is Make America Great Again, it's an acronym, during a MAGA rally, that Charlie Kirk, the founder of Turning Point USA, then announced in front of the audience that he was going to be appointing Candace Owens as director for urban outreach for Turning Point USA. So I found that to be very strange, and I'm going to explain to you why. Because of the simple reason that a couple of months before that, Turning Point USA was being accused of racism against African Americans. They were being accused of ethno-racism against Hispanic Americans. Because of the simple reason that at the time that Charlie Kirk appointed Candace Owens as director of urban outreach for Turning Point USA, Candace Owens wasn't even a registered Republican. She wasn't a registered conservative. She was still a registered Democrat. And she said this when she went on to the Joe Rogan show. So this is what I'm saying. So something didn't make sense. So I said, how could a woman that didn't vote for Donald Trump, has 24 videos on her YouTube channel, and not one of those videos is talking about supporting Donald Trump, and is not talking about supporting any right-wingers? So what is it that she's talking about that the right is interested in promoting? So I go onto her page. All 24 videos evolve around calling African Americans slaves of the left, because it's all race baiting. That's the only thing Candace Owens does. She race baits. She calls African Americans slaves. She calls them oppressed. She shames them for being in the left. She encourages racist white people to shed their white guilt. If you don't believe me, you can go to Candace Owens' YouTube page and you can find videos where she's encouraging racist white people to shed their white guilt. She also synonymously creates a video that says, I don't care about the KKK or Charlottesville or anything. So what is it that this African-American right-winger is promoting? So when I try to address all these inconsistencies and the fact that she was being allowed to go to Fox News and promote historical revisionism by claiming that the NRA was founded as a civil rights movement with the sole purpose of arming African Americans so that they can fend themselves from attacks from the Ku Klux Klan. That is an absolute lie. What she did was she took some facts and she mixed it with some fiction. Is the NRA a civil rights organization? Yes, it is. Why is it a civil rights organization? Well, because if you look at our Constitution, our Second Amendment, which guarantees our rights to bear arms, the NRA being the first ones to actually hone and enhance marksmanship for those who were exercising their rights to bear arms, then under that context, then and the NRA is a civil rights organization. But the NRA wasn't founded with the sole purpose of helping African Americans fend themselves from attacks from the Ku Klux Klan. Matter of fact, historically, the NRA has supported laws that minimize gun access to the African American community. If you look at the fact that in 1960, when the Mulford Act was enacted, the Mulford Act was enacted immediately after the rise of the Black Panther Party, when black communities started arming themselves. So when the Mulford Act came out, guess who publicly endorsed them? The NRA, which means that the NRA publicly endorsed a law known as the Mulford Act in order to minimize the ability of African Americans to have access to guns. So if we're going to talk about facts, let's talk about facts. So because of this is the reason why I went from getting almost 40 million views in 2016 to down to 12 million views in 2017 to less than maybe 500,000 views now in 2018. Because when you speak the truth and the truth conflicts with the agenda, with the propaganda, with the rhetoric, or with the narrative that special interest agents in the right that are in control of these news and information outlets and are in control of what information they're going to allow to be distributed and circulated, it is because of this that eventually you start losing a base. Because the problem is that there's no way to turn to. So because there's no way to turn to, I stay in the middle. I can point fingers at the left when the left is wrong, and I can point fingers at the right when the right is wrong. Because ultimately, as a logical and rational human being, I've concluded that there is no such thing as the perfect party, nor is there a such thing as an exclusively tolerant party. Because in the same manner that I've seen racism in the left, I've seen ethno-racism in the right. And with that being stated, I want everybody to stay safe and stay informed. And you already know,